If you look at his wife, she was standing there. She had nothing to say. Maybe she wasn't allowed to have anything to say. I always wanted to get the Purple Heart. You can get the baby out of here.
Just when you thought Trump's long national nightmare was over, he traveled to Florida, where mosquitoes are now spreading Zika, where our governor is pressing Washington for more help and said our governor has it under control.
He's going to have it under control. He probably already does.
We'll bring in U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy, who says the fight against Zika could soon come to a halt just as it takes off in Florida. And John Wilson will weigh in on Trump's rough week in his view now. This is Money, Power, and Politics. Okay, so Republican leaders and campaign officials are so worried about Donald Trump, they want to have an intervention, which could get awkward. Could you imagine how something like that would play out?
What I would say is that...
Take the talking pillow.
Can you guess how Trump might respond?
Get what I'm saying? No.
Trump has already dismissed reports of turmoil and chaos and dissension and disunity and crisis, and his campaign blamed that intervention talk on Newt Gingrich.
I think some of what Trump has done is just very self-destructive.
The guy who desperately wanted to be Trump's running mate and is now telling the world that Trump's a mess.
It's like watching a team go out in the field, throw an interception on the first play, and go back off the field again. And he's thrown a series of interceptions in the last week that really do not bode well for his campaign.
What more can you say?
It's a little bit like The Apprentice, except he's the apprentice. He's not the boss.
And he turned heads yet again in Florida when he did not appear to grasp the Zika health crisis, which causes severe birth defects and is spreading through mosquitoes now in South Florida, while Governor Scott and leaders in both parties are sounding alarms and pressing for much more action from Washington. Trump said our governor probably already has it under control and that somehow it's up to him whether Congress has an emergency session.
I would say that it's up to Rick Scott. It depends on what he's looking to do, because he really seems to have it under control in Florida.
Well, the U.S. Surgeon General told us something quite different. In fact, he said as the outbreak spreads, the campaign to fight Zika could come to a halt.
We all have concerns that if that funding doesn't come in, our ability to continue doing mosquito control, expanding our efforts on vaccine development, these will all be compromised, and that's not something we can afford.
Drive that home for us. When you say compromise, does that mean that research and development would simply stop if and when the funds run out?
Yeah, if the funds run out, we would not be able to continue our efforts to develop a vaccine. And that's a tragedy because we know that a vaccine could be an incredibly important tool in helping us to prevent complications of Zika.
Paint the worst case scenario for Florida. You were raised in this state. You know it well. If Congress again takes no action, what specifically would be the threat to Florida over, say, the next 6 months?
Well, if Congress doesn't take action to provide funds for the Zika response, then we will not be able to work on mosquito control as aggressively as we need to. We will not be able to invest in the development of a vaccine in the continued way that we need to. We're doing that right now, but we won't be able to continue our efforts. And we won't be able to possibly ensure that we have the full complement of testing and diagnostic capacity that we will need for the duration of this epidemic. We don't know how long Zika is going to be a problem in the United States, but we have to be prepared and for it to go on for a number of months. What I don't want to see is for us to mobilize all of our resources right now and do everything we can and then find out in a few months that we ran out of resources. That would be tragic.
Dr. Murthy, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you.
So we have a lot of ground to cover tonight, from the Zika health crisis in Florida to the Trump campaign caught up in a tangle of distractions. And that brings us to perspective from our anchor emeritus, John Wilson.
This is John Wilson's My View Now.
And yes, sir, My View Now. John, thank you again for joining us.
Can't believe you had me back.
One of the highlights of the week. What are you talking about? All right, let's talk about Donald Trump. When you hear Donald Trump say that he thinks Governor Scott probably already has Zika under control, what does that tell you?
It tells me that he doesn't know what's going on. It tells me that this man, who has piqued our interest in his campaign because of his bombastic style, is not keeping up with the news. Is he just watching television? He says that every now and then. This is an incredible potential catastrophe facing us. Florida knows more about this stuff than we've been spraying mosquitoes here longer than anybody. If anybody knows how to do this, it's the state of Florida. And to think that the legislature would not provide the money and that Donald Trump would not know what Zika virus is all about and the potential danger it poses is a frightening thought, Craig.
What do you say to Donald Trump if you were to have one of these interventions with him? What can you say? What would you do?
Well, he's being told this very thing right now, I am sure, and he's been told this for the past probably month. You've got to stick to the subjects. Subjects are jobs, the economy, national security. Get off, and Hillary Clinton, but get off all of these personal reactions to these challenges, to the odd remarks that he's making out there that does nothing to further the discussion of the subjects that we're worried about and concerned about, from ISIS to Zika. We need to be talking about all of that. He's not.
And not agitate or go after a Gold Star family. Don't go after a fire marshal for enforcing the fire code. That's something that you shouldn't have to teach.
Well, let me tell you, as an Army veteran, when I saw him do that, that kind of pushed me over the edge, because I was trying to give him credit up to that point, that he was really sensitive to who we are in this country. Okay, so they're a Muslim family. That family is Pakistani. Their son died fighting for the United States, and he doesn't take any of that into consideration. He starts talking about the Islamic issue with his wife not talking, his mother not talking, and then she later explained that she can't do this when she's talking about her son. She's overcome with grief about that. And I felt so uncomfortable for Don Trump, and I felt so uncomfortable for them. But it showed me that Trump has no connection with reality here, Craig.
Where does this go? Play this out for us. Where are we 1 week from now, 1 month from now, 96 days from now, come election night?
Boy, where does it go? That's what we all want to know. Well, I'll tell you what the unknown factor is. The unknown factor here is the turnout. We don't know if it's going to be a big turnout or a very low turnout. We've got a candidate here who's got an incredible support group of middle-class Americans who want change. We want change. All of us, we all want change. He's capitalized on that. But when you get down to the specifics, he's been unable to deliver on that every time.
John, thank you for your perspective.
Not
Once
at all.
again, My View Now. We'll see you next week.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Coming up, what happened to the issue that drove Trump to the top of the pack? We'll show you how the immigration debate has shifted. And Charlie LeDuff is on the border where American families are under siege.
They poison the dogs so they won't bark.
Can we get the Mexicans to build a wall on their side?
Yeah, well, they'll build it.
Awesome! Think about it. Not only will the Mexicans pay for the wall, they'll build it on their land. Then all the guys in front of the Home Depot in Los Angeles will run home to build it. And only when they're done building it will they realize they've sealed themselves in.
Did you hear what he said?
It'll be great.
And so goes the plan that drove Trump's rise in the polls last year. Funny how parties and politics change. In our Throwback Thursday segment, take a look back at how Republican leaders used to talk about illegal immigration. Here's a look back at how Republicans used to debate the issue of immigration.
Do you think the children of illegal aliens should be allowed to attend Texas public schools free, or do you think that their parents should pay for their education?
They would get whatever it is that they're, what the society is giving to their neighbors. But the problem has to be solved. The problem has to be solved because as we have kind of made illegal some kinds of labor that I'd like to see legal, we're doing two things. We're creating a whole society of really honorable, decent, family-loving people that are in violation of the law, and secondly, we're exacerbating relations with Mexico. These are good people, strong people. Part of my family is a Mexican.
Rather than making them or talking about putting up a fence, why don't we work out some recognition of our mutual problems, make it possible for them to come here legally with a work permit, and then while they're working and earning here, they pay taxes here. And when they want to go back, they can go back, and they can cross and open the border both ways.
You can see the shift in tone by playing Trump and Reagan back to back.
I've thought a bit of the shining city upon a hill.
Our country is a total mess.
and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace.
They're rapists.
For all the pilgrims from all the lost places.
I will build a great, great wall.
And if there had to be city walls, the walls had doors.
I will make that wall impenetrable.
And the doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get there.
Now, there is a lot to consider on both sides of the immigration issue. For example, you may not know that our government tried to wall off Mexico once before and just wound up walling off Americans from their own country, and the project ran out of money. Here is what Charlie LeDuff found when he went to the border.
The first thing you notice is the border wall isn't on the border at all. Not in Texas. Because of treaties and flooding, they had to build a wall miles off the natural border, the Rio Grande River, which stretches 1,200 miles. And the Americans on the wrong side of the fence? They live in a no man's land of human smugglers and narco trafficking.
We don't go down the river anymore because it's quite dangerous, but the last time we went down, they have their boats lined up along the river to bring people across. Day or night, it makes no difference here.
Are you afraid?
No. We've had every dog poisoned. They poison the dogs so they won't bark.
And this is new since that?
Oh, everything is. It makes no difference.
It's all new now because of this fence?
Well,
because they come this way?
There's gaps in the fence, you know. It's not a complete deal.
I will build the greatest wall.
And it's going to be a serious wall.
A big, beautiful, powerful wall. And nobody builds walls better than me, believe me.
If you think Trump's wall is the work of the Tea Party, then think again.
I know who voted. Bernie voted for it. I know he did.
And Hillary.
And Hillary voted for it too.
And Obama.
Yeah. And Obama voted, yeah.
This used to be a golf club until the government walled it off from the United States. It didn't stop illegals from using it as a right-of-way. It did stop golfers from coming. And after 28 years, the owner went bankrupt.
I saw some guys cross, and when we turned over here, I'd seen some guys climb the fence, the actual fence. It shouldn't be comical. It shouldn't be something to laugh at because, you know, that was our money. All those millions is spent. But it almost was because it's like, didn't even slow them down, you know.
And on the other side of the debate, we found a lot of families living in the shadows and children here in Tampa Bay who were brought here illegally by no fault of their own.
Yo no puedo salir de la casa.
Socorro Maldonado just said she can't leave the house. She's been hiding here in Tampa for the past 14 years, and her daughter Leslie grew up not knowing why.
I would always ask my mom, what's a Social Security? They're like, oh, something you don't have.
They came from Mexico when Leslie was 4 years old to escape the gangs known for killing civilians and snatching kids.
Tenía mucho miedo de que me quitaran un hijo. No sé.
Socorro feared they would take her children, so she took them across the border illegally and raised them in Florida. Leslie's father works in the shadows doing construction, and her mom and aunt have been disconnected by language and fear.
They're too scared to get a job.
Leslie always assumed she was American and that her parents were safe.
Like, wait, so my parents can be taken away from me at any point. I could be taken away.
She discovered the secret around 5 years ago when she told her parents she wanted to go to college.
I cried. I broke down. It broke me in all kinds of ways.
Coming up, we'll show you where immigration now ranks in terms of priorities for voters. And Evan Axelbank has the election barometer. We'll show you how and where the needle is moving.
Okay, we're here now in Evan's Corner with Evan Axelbank. Thank you again for joining us.
Good to be here.
We have some changes to talk about. If you look at the issues that drove Trump last year, of course it was immigration. And Gallup, the biggest polls that drive voting behavior, economy, terrorism, jobs, which relates to the economy and healthcare, all things Trump has not been talking much about, just burning him in the polls.
And there's no question about it. If you think about it, what the message of the campaign is right now, they spent a lot more time responding to the things that the Clinton campaign has said and also to the other things that have come up in the news, these kind of little distraction issues with the Khan family, with some of the things you've seen over immigration, the way his supporters have acted on the campaign trail. We saw the New York Times put out what I thought was a devastating video just yesterday of some of the vulgarities that people during his campaign and his rallies have been saying, and those are all things that his campaign has had to respond to, and that takes time away from, as you said, economy, immigration, jobs, and I'll also say the credibility gap that Hillary Clinton still has. People still don't find her trustworthy, yet the Trump campaign is not talking about it.
And with that, not just sliding in the polls, the Trump campaign is also seeing the electoral map beginning to shrink on them, are they not?
Well, they're right. You're right. And one of the things that they're having a big issue with is in Colorado. Right now, I just saw the Sabado Crystal Ball, one of the respected polling agencies and kind of forecasting agencies, has moved Colorado from leans Democratic to likely Democratic. Well, that right there is 9 more electoral votes that Donald Trump is simply not going to have to play with. Take a look at the map here. This is 538's real clear average. You see Colorado is just as blue as any of the other states. This is if the election were held today. Right now, Hillary Clinton would have a 91% chance of winning. That basically says she is a shoo-in if the election were held today. If you go to some of the other averages here, the polls only forecast, that dips a little bit, but you can see here Pennsylvania has continued to get bluer.
Look
Colorado,
at Georgia. Look at Georgia there.
And Georgia is barely in the Republican column. If you look, only a 61% chance for Trump to win Georgia. Those are electoral votes that Donald Trump simply has to have. And I'll also point to one other thing, Florida. There's a new poll that came out today in Florida that says Clinton 48, Trump 42. If that's the way this thing goes, also look, Pennsylvania, 49-38 for Clinton to Trump. Donald Trump simply can't survive those poll numbers. He's got to find a way to get his message back on track, to talk about the economy, the credibility gap with the Clintons. We know that Hillary Clinton is not seen as trustworthy by the majority of American voters, but when's the last time you saw Donald Trump get a 24-hour news cycle centered on that? It's probably been weeks.
That's if the election was held today. It's all bad news for Trump. If there's good news for Trump, if the election was held today, a lot of people would be confused because it's usually...
Well, it's not held today. 3 months, 96 days, as you said.
Good deal. Evan, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Coming up, House Speaker Paul Ryan and other Republican leaders are teeing off on Trump, but they say they still plan to vote for him. We'll show you where this is leading and what it means for November.
Well, House Speaker Paul Ryan had the line of the night on Donald Trump. Yeah, said Ryan, he's had a pretty strange run since the convention. And he also said his endorsement of Trump is not a blank check. And he said the Trump campaign is distressing to him, expressing concerns, obviously, about style and tone. Well, what about policy? Well, that brings us to the last Republican president, George W. Bush, who also has attacked Trump's policies. Did not use him by name, but in attacking policies, as he put it, of isolationism, nativism, and protectionism. The implication is clear there. The last Republican president is also taking aim at Donald Trump. At the same time, you have a new McClatchy-Marist survey showing Hillary Clinton leading Donald Trump by 15 points across the nation. If you look at the Real Clear Politics average, Trump is currently down nearly 7 points. Of course, there have been cases. Bush 41 trailed Dukakis badly in the summer and won. You have Ford, who trailed Carter badly, and though that didn't go his way, ultimately closed much of the gap. So there is still a good way to go here. That, however, is the end of our show tonight. So we will see you tomorrow night for another edition of Money, Power, and Politics. Thank you.